Hello everyone. 62 years ago, Japan's global ambitions were threatened when the United States imposed restrictions on the export of oil to Japan. Out of desperation, Japan felt compelled to secure a critical supply chain through proactive violence, which led to the surprise attack on Pearl Harbor. Everything changed thereafter. Today, the United States is facing similar crippling restrictions on its access to critical minerals and metals. These critical minerals are the essential and irreplaceable materials powering most of modern technology. Particularly in defense industry, these elements are needed to build everything from bullets to nuclear weapons. The United States is almost entirely dependent on imports of these critical elements from the international market, where China is the sole big player. Every advanced weapon in the U.S. arsenal today, from Tomahawk cruise missiles to the F-35 fighter jets to Aegis-equipped destroyers to precision-guided weapons to stealthy drones and everything in between, is absolutely reliant on components made using rare earth elements and materials, which are almost exclusively made in China. The ability of the U.S. to maintain any military competitive edge over its rivals depends on this vulnerable supply chain. We can say if the Middle East has oil, China has critical metals and rare earth elements. Since 1985, China has systematically gained near complete control over the global supply chain of these critical metals. Each F-35 aircraft jointly produced by 14 allied nations and considered crucial for future warfare contains 920 pounds of Chinese origin rare earth elements. In the past, China has demonstrated its ability to directly affect the global supply chain of these elements. In 2020, in response to a U.S. defense deal with Taiwan, China threatened to cut off the supply of rare earths to 3 American defense manufacturers, including F-35 producer Lockheed Martin. Prior to discussing further about the Chinese monopoly in the field and its consequences for the United States and its allies, let's review what are the critical metals and rare earth elements. As per United States, critical minerals is a non-fuel mineral or metal essential to the economic and national security, the supply chain of which is vulnerable to disruption, and the absence of which would have significant consequences on the economy or national security. In 2018, the U.S. Geological Survey published a list of 35 minerals and metals which are critical for the United States' progress and national security. The list includes a group of 17 rare earth elements: tungsten, lithium, cobalt, antimony, and many more. Out of 35 critical minerals and metals, as identified by the U.S. Geological Survey, China ranked as the #1 producer of 16 elements. China has a near monopoly in global production of yttrium with 99% share, gallium with 94% share, magnesium metal with 87% share, tungsten with 82% share, bismuth with 80% share, antimony with 72% share, and rare earth elements with 80% global production share. China also produces roughly 60% or more of the world's graphite, germanium, tellurium, indium, antimony, vanadium, and fluorspar. In 2017, the United States had no primary production of 22 minerals and 5 mineral byproducts on the critical minerals list. There is some U.S. primary production of around 9 minerals only. The United States is a leading producer of only 2 minerals out of 35 critical metals, namely beryllium and helium. Another part of the game is processing of these critical minerals and metals. China controls more than 95% global processing of rare earth metals, 80% global processing of lithium, and 70% global processing of cobalt. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, critical minerals dominated by a single producing country include niobium from Brazil, cobalt from the Dominican Republic of the Congo, and platinum group metals from South Africa. Chinese producers have successfully negotiated long-term supply agreements within these countries. There are 6 critical minerals that are classified as byproducts: indium, tellurium, gallium, germanium, cobalt, and rhenium. The supply of these byproducts is already limited by the output of the main product, which are already mostly controlled by China. In order to meet the emergency needs of national security, the United States maintains national defense stockpile of these strategic minerals since the Korean War. The stockpile includes a multitude of minerals critical to the defense industrial supply chain, such as titanium, tungsten, cobalt, and lithium. In 1952, at the beginning of the Cold War, this stockpile was valued at $42 billion. Today, the value has dropped to only $888 million US. The US Congress had repeatedly authorized multi-million dollar sales of the reserve over the past several decades to fund other programs. These sell-offs have included 3,000 tons of titanium, which is used in building military airframes, and 76 million pounds of tungsten, which is used in military turbine engines and armor-piercing ammunition. The sell-offs have also included more than 2 million pounds of tantalum and 26 million pounds of cobalt. Today, the National Defense Stockpile is no longer capable of covering the Department of Defense's needs in the event of any future supply chain disruption. The United States has little to no reserves in all 35 of the critical minerals except for helium and beryllium. In certain minerals, the United States has significant resource potential, like of tungsten, lithium, vanadium, uranium, and rubies. However, U.S. lacks extraction and processing technology for most of these minerals. The United States is 100% import reliant on 14 minerals on the critical minerals list, including graphite, manganese, niobium, rare earths, and tantalum, among others. The United States is more than 75% import reliant on an additional 10 critical minerals, including antimony, barite, bauxite, bismuth, potash, rhenium, tellurium, tin, titanium concentrate, and uranium. Let's review the few critical minerals and materials for which the USA is dependent on other countries, particularly China, and the importance of these elements for national security. First of all, let's look at rare earth elements. The rare earth elements are a commonly recognized group of 17 elements included in the list of critical minerals identified by the U.S. Geological Survey. Rare earth elements have often been produced as byproduct of other elements such as gold, uranium, copper, phosphates, and iron. These elements are extensively used in aircraft structures, integrated circuits, rockets, engines, ship hulls, and weapon systems. There are few, and in some cases no known alternatives for most of these rare earths. Rare earths are not actually rare as depicts from the name. Rather, they are much abundant beneath the earth, but are highly scattered and usually found mixed together in other deposits. This makes it difficult to find them in such a high quantity, so these can be economically mined and separated. Since the 1960s, the United States was the world's largest producer of rare earth elements. From the 1980s, China began rare earths mining and became a major low-cost producer. Today, China controls 80% of rare earths global production and 95% of its processing. In 2019, the United States imported 100% of required rare earth minerals. China is the largest source of the U.S. RE imports, with 74% of total imports. Approximately 40% RE reserves being exploited today are in China. Although the remaining majority lies elsewhere, having the raw material is just one part of the supply chain. The other critical part is processing. Since decades, the Chinese government has subsidized the rare earth industry according to long-term strategic plans. Resultantly, a high competitive Chinese industry of rare earths has emerged with complex technology, low-cost processes, and competitive settings to dominate the global market. Moreover, China has been filing more than 80% international patents related to rare earth technology. On the other hand, due to certain environmental issues and strict regulations, most of the advanced nations were reluctant to enter into this market. As a result, China achieved a near monopoly. China has also deliberately consolidated the rare earths production. Last year, China merged the 5 major Chinese rare earth metal companies, including 3 state-owned enterprises, namely China Minmetals Rare Earth, China Ico Rare Earth and Metals, and China Southern Rare Earth Group, and 2 private companies, namely Guangzhou Zhonglan and Jiangxi Guangzhou Rare Metals. The result was the world's largest rare earths producer, China Rare Earth Group, accounting for 30% of China's total rare earth metals production and 60 to 70% of its heavy rare earth elements production. The few big Chinese rare earths companies with less corporate competition and more state control have enabled China to control prices in the international market and to exert more bargaining power with foreign buyers. The consolidation has also opened new expansion opportunities globally. Last year, a Chinese company acquired British lithium producer Bacanora. China has twice threatened to use its dominance in rare earths as a weapon against political rivals. In 2010, China threatened Japan with a ban on re-exports to the country over regional island disputes in the East China Sea. In 2019, when trade negotiations failed, China showed its intention to ban the exports of rare earths to 3 American defense giants. In response to the strategic threat posed by Chinese dominance on the industry, the U.S. Senate has introduced multiple bills in the recent years to bolster American production of the metals. The Pentagon is already sponsoring more production at home by awarding contracts to local firms. The U.S. Department of Defense has also awarded Australia's Lynas Rare Earths a grant to build a light rare earths refinery in Texas. The Lynas Corporation, based in Australia, manages the only complete supply chain outside of China. Recently, MP Materials of the USA has shown significant progress in local mining of rare earths, but still 100% of this output is sent to Chinese processing plants for further processing. Many Western companies, particularly automobile manufacturers, have sought ways to reduce their reliance on rare earths, yet it will take decades for the West to eliminate dependence on China. Another critical mineral is antimony. The antimony is a chemical element which is critical to the defense supply chain and is needed to produce everything from armor-piercing bullets to nuclear weapons. China is the largest producer of the mineral with approximately 72% of global production. Presently, the United States has little to no domestic production and relied on China for more than 61% of its antimony requirement. Russia is gaining ground as the world's second largest supplier of antimony, with Tajikistan coming in third. China has 48% of global reserves for the element, whereas the United States has only 3% raw reserves but lacks mining or processing technologies. Some steps have been taken by the United States recently to obtain the critical metal through recycling, though in extremely less quantity. Tungsten is considered as the critical chemical element having a variety of defense applications. It is used in kinetic energy penetrators, missiles, grenades, bullets, and atomic weapons. China has a monopoly in the tungsten market with 82% global production. Presently, the United States has no domestic production for this critical element. 32% of the U.S. imports of tungsten come from China. Another critical element is cobalt, which is used in aircraft engines, lithium-ion batteries, magnets, and high-strength alloys. The Democratic Republic of Congo is the largest supplier of this metal with 61% share of the global production. However, China has a majority ownership of 70% of the cobalt mined in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Moreover, when it comes to processing this element, China is again at the dominant position with having control on more than 70% of the processing of this critical mineral. The US has some production of cobalt as byproduct of copper, but almost entirely rely on its imports. Lithium is another critical element, which is used in lithium-ion batteries, torpedoes, as solid fuel, and thermonuclear weapons as fuel for fusion stage, with many other important industrial applications. Australia is the top producer of lithium, with 58% share, whereas Chile is the second largest producer with 21%. China is the third largest producer, with global share of around 10%. However, mining is one part of the process, and the final usable lithium output depends on its processing. Presently, China is the largest processor of lithium, with having direct control over more than 50% of global lithium supply, and more than 80% control over lithium refined for lithium batteries and military usage. The US has some production of the element, with small processing capabilities. Another critical element is titanium, which is used in aircraft engines and frames, missiles, spacecraft, and satellites. China has the world's largest trove of titanium and is the second largest producer of the element with 15% global share after South Africa with 18% global share. Presently, the United States has small production of the element and mainly imports this element from South Africa, Australia, and Canada. The alternate option for USA to fulfill precious mineral and metal needs without depending on China is to use secondary and recycling measures. Secondary recovery can occur from waste products during the metal refining and manufacturing process, or from discarded products. At present, the United States has little to no secondary recovery for many critical minerals. However, large-scale steps are being taken to explore this area. Recently, the U.S. Congress directed the Defense Department to instate a policy of recycling spent batteries to reclaim precious metals, rare earth minerals, and elements of strategic importance, such as cobalt and lithium, to refill the national strategic reserves. For 9 out of 33 import extensive critical minerals, the United States has significant amount of secondary recovery sources, like for aluminum, chromium, cobalt, gallium, indium, magnesium metal, platinum group metals, tin, and titanium. USA can also cooperate with allies in order to obtain the recycling technologies for certain materials. Countries in the European Union, Japan, and South Korea are strengthening their efforts in secondary recovery because emerging markets like China and India seek to secure greater access to primary materials. However, quantity of most metal and materials available for recycling will likely continue to meet a fraction of demand. According to the U.S. National Research Council, the main issue in the secondary recovery in the United States is the lack of clear policies and programs at all levels of government to embrace the recovery of critical minerals. There is no doubt that the United States has to work on war footings to fulfill its need of critical minerals from its own or allies' resources if it wants to retain the title of global power in the future. Please like, share, and subscribe for more updates.